Hello, hello, hello. What's going on here then? How you doing, folks? Welcome to the Master in the Box live stream for November. Hope everyone is keeping safe and well. I hope you can all hear me okay. If the volume's a bit low, let me know and I'll boost some gain up in OBS. So I've had a bit of a change of interface for the next few weeks because my poor old Antelope Audio Zengo Synergy Core has had to go to the doctors for a little bit of an MOT, let's say. So yeah, a bit of a new setup just for a short time, but hope everyone's keeping safe and well. And yeah, what a week. What a week. So the announcement that Fender and Presonus are merging / acquisition. It's been a bit of a, yeah, let's just say a bit of a surprise, completely unexpected. And I know that a lot of people on the forums have been divided over it. So I thought, well, what better way to have a quick discussion on the live stream about the merger and what this could potentially mean for Presonus Studio One and beyond. So I really want to keep this this session very much interactive, so please ask away any questions that you may have. I'm not going to know most of the answers because I'm not a Presonus employee, but what I will do is I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on what I think could potentially happen and my overall opinion. So yeah, please leave your comments in the comment section down below or in the chat, and we'll certainly go through questions, answers as we go through the live stream. Because it is quite an emotive subject, I would just ask, please, if you're going to make comments, please have respect for others as well. I certainly don't want to start having these massive arguments in the chat section. So please feel free to ask questions away, but just be mindful that there are people with different opinions which can cause some conflict. So yeah, let's all try and keep this as adult as possible. So brief overview before we start and get into it. It's been another whirlwind month. It is fantastic. I've got to say, I am so fortunate, so lucky to be in the position I'm in. I'm involved in so many different things at the moment, so many different projects. Anyone who saw the brief update from the 1K subscriber plugin giveaway, firstly, congratulations to Billy Morgan was the winner, and we are arranging for the TB Pro Audio ABLM2 plugin license to be sent across to him. So Billy, I'll get that chased up for you and we'll get that across to you ASAP. So congratulations once again. Recently finished the master for Aria over at IDDQD Sound. Top bloke, great song. It's featuring the super talented Jane Carmelamo, and I left some links in the last video. It was a great song to work on. Challenging, but challenging in a really good way. Really well produced, very well written, and it was something that we discussed in the Studio One e-meetup last Friday. So the UK Studio One online meetup, we discussed about songs that have personal meaning, and if you really can get, you know, that kind of emotion, that personal connection into the song, it just has so much more resonance. And you know, this is no exception. So it's Kurdistan Waltz by IDDQD Sound featuring Jane Carmelamo. Check it out. It's available on all the major streaming platforms, Bandcamp and iTunes, all sorts. So check it out, Kurdistan Waltz by IDDQD Sound featuring Jane Carmelamo. Such fun working on that one. And then, yeah, there's literally so much. The website, the new website, the old website has been, or the current website should say, is functional, but it needs a good revamp. It needs to be more user friendly. So I'm actively working on that. Hopefully that's going to be released, I'd like to think, within the next week or two. So there should be a much more comprehensive website, let's say, much easier to go through, much easier to find what you need to find. There's going to be a mastering section, there's an education section, and some of the other services that I offer that people don't always know about. And as you can see in the right hand side here, I do offer services through Fiverr.com as well. And I've recently just launched the mastering services through Fiverr.com at a, let's say, a very budget-friendly price. I really want to kind of build a really good following, a good community. So I've kind of priced it in a way which is more accessible. So, you know, check it out through Fiverr.com. I say it's www.fiverr.com, and then there's the link /share/K5YXQL. So links over there, and the mix and the mastering critiques. This is something I really enjoy doing. So it's basically listening to any mix you've got or any master you've got, and you just want a second opinion. You know, it's a service that I offer, and what I effectively do is I'll go through, I'll listen to the song, I could even compare it against reference tracks, and then I'll provide a video breakdown. So this is something that I do where I will look at some reference tracks that we discussed beforehand, a particular sound that you'll try and aim for, and I'll compare your track against reference tracks and give you an honest critique. But it's not. Critique is always a funny word. I'm always a little bit kind of cautious about using the word critique, but it's very much positive feedback, trying to give you some real guidance on how you can improve your mixing skills, your mastering skills, and your overall production. So if that's something you're interested in as well, there's a link on the right hand side through Fiverr.com as well. And if you do like the content that we're providing, I really enjoy these videos, but once again, it's to keep the channel going. Any support is greatly appreciated. So I've left the link there through or for buymeacoffee.com/mastering-ITB. So if you want to support the channel by buying me a coffee, then there's the link for you as well. So, yep, lots and lots to hopefully update you on very soon. But yeah, let's get into the news this week then. So, Fender. And it's the Fender Acquisition. I'm just going to read. So for anyone who doesn't know, Fender has effectively signed a definitive agreement of merger with Presonus Audio Electronics. It's very new. This was only announced literally 48 hours ago, and it's taken a lot of people by surprise. It was completely unexpected. Which is kind of, it's the norm. I think we need to kind of, really kind of, when it comes to business transactions like this, they're like non-disclosure agreements all over the place. It's very hush-hush because of all the complexities around shares, etc., and things like that. It has to be very tightly regulated. So it's not a surprise it was completely, completely out the blue. But for me, I know it's divided a lot of opinions on the Studio One Facebook group, and there's been lots of people certainly raising, not necessarily concerns, but certainly raising a bit of an eyebrow as to what this kind of means for Studio One moving forward. And I'll be honest with you, my first reaction has been very positive. I think it could be, I honestly, truly think it could be the making of Studio One, and there's a few reasons why I want to discuss this, and this is very much my opinion. So just to reiterate, I'm in no way employed by Presonus. I'm not an affiliate of Presonus. I'm not an endorsed artist. I'm very much just a user of Studio One. So this is very much my own thoughts and opinions based on my experience. But I think this potentially could be a very good move for both parties. And we'll come on to that in just a second. But there's a few things that I really wanted to kind of talk to. And rather than kind of doing some kind of formal presentation and things like that, like I said, I really want to kind of keep this interactive. So any questions you got, please shout them out in the chat and we'll get to them. But for me, I wanted to come at this from a bit more of an educated point of view, because I think it's very easy to have an opinion on something like this without knowing the real facts as such. And the biggest thing that I've seen over the last couple of days has been around the whole Gibson cakewalk thing, and there's a lot of worry around whether it's going to be a repeat, whether we're going to get into another cakewalk situation where Gibson bought Cakewalk and then basically effectively disbanded it, and it was then bought out by BandLab and then kind of brought, re-raised from the ashes, so to speak. And I know a lot of people have got some concerns as to whether that could be a similar situation here. And I really don't think that's going to be the case. And I'll explain this to you now. So I've gone through and I've done some, I've gone through and done a little bit of research. And just going through some of the timeline of Fender itself, it makes very, very interesting and important reading for how I feel this is going to pan out moving forward. So, Fender has been a company that's been around for a long, long time, dating back to, say, 1946, Leo Fender, and then Leo Fender actually sold the company to CBS in 1965. Fender went through massive growth over the next 20 years, but there was kind of it's suggested a lack of commitment, but it's actually a real understanding of the ownership at that point in how Fender operates and how the music industry operated at that time. So what they basically did is CBS decided to what it classifies reinvent Fender, and in 1981 they introduced new management. So this was William Schultz became the company president, supported by the associate William Mendello, and they had a 5-year business plan which was based on increasing Fender's marketplace with quality improvement and a greater commitment to research and development. CBS in the 1980s, it said that basically they shed their non-broadcast media businesses, and this is when a group of employees from Fender and investors led by Schultz bought Fender from CBS in 1985. So the sale put the Fender name back into the hands of a small group of dedicated people committed to creating the world's best guitars and amplifiers. And I think that's actually very, very important, because if you think about the origins of Presonus, where it's come from, and it's still such a new company, 95 I think it was formed, 1995, so Presonus as a brand is still relatively new, and Studio One, I think we really do forget how young Studio One is. And I think at times it punches above its weight, and I know some people have their negative comments towards Studio One, and I think once again we need to kind of just take a step back and appreciate how for want of a better term, immature Studio One is, and it needs to mature further. So I think that's going to be quite crucial. So if you look at the history and how the Fender changed hands back in 1985, it very much kind of, for me, resonates with parallels with Studio One. The new Fender Musical Instruments Corporation had to start from scratch. There was no buildings, machinery, among other things. That they say that Fender Musical Instruments Corporation, that they purchased the name, the intellectual property, and some leftover parts, but it was very much kind of like a build-up from scratch type thing. So it was a core group of loyal employees, and once again, I think this is going to be crucial. Loyal employees, dealers, and suppliers, some of whom had been with the company since Leo Fender had founded it. And then Schultz and his colleagues set out to rebuild an American icon. So, once again, it's very much kind of have that kind of community, that family ethos, which very much kind of rings true with Presonus. The new Fender initially imported its guitars from offshore manufacturers with proven ability, which is, that is not uncommon. But they went on to say that the move towards greater quality control soon led to the establishment in 1985 of their flagship US factory in Corona. A second modern manufacturing facility opened in 1987 in Mexico. Once again, we know a lot about the Mexico guitars, etc. And then it was in the early 90s when they moved from Corona to Scottsdale, Arizona. And then that's basically where it goes on to say they've kind of built up their marketing, their advertising, sales and export operations, and then they've got international satellite offices. So they've got offices in England, France, Germany, Japan, Mexico, Netherlands, Spain, Sweden. It kind of really did kind of spread its wings, so to speak. And then it goes on to say Schultz retired in 2005 and Mendello became CEO. So, since its founding, Fender has grown to be one of the world's leading marketers, manufacturers and distributors of musical instruments. It manufactures and distributes everything guitarists and bassists needs, from instruments, amplifiers, strings, accessories to professional audio products. And then it goes on to say how it is looking towards the 21st century, etc., etc., etc. So for me, just looking through the history of Fender itself, it's very, very much, since the mid '80s. It steeps in the not only the tradition of the brand itself, but it's very much kind of been formed from that whole family community ethos, which is where it is today. So that's certainly one thing, and I think we can draw a lot of parallels there between Fender and Presonus. So I think that's certainly something that's going to resonate. But I just started to think about this a little bit further, and just thinking about some of the branding's not the right word. Let's think about some of the products that Fender produce. I mean, Fender is a music group, and you've got the likes of obviously Fender, you've got EVH, you've got Squier, and you've got 3 or 4 others in the group, Jackson, Gretsch. So this is very much kind of steeped in history, but it's all very much geared around the instrument side of things. There's not really much in the terms of pro audio world. And what I wanted to do is actually just look at this whole Gibson versus Fender model, just to kind of understand a little bit more about the differences in the companies, because I think one of the things that we seem to forget is Gibson. Not only is Gibson, it is a massive brand, but once again, Gibson is very much kind of, it buys a lot of companies and forms a group, whereas Fender has kind of really developed a wider own named brand product list. So if you go onto the Gibson website, you'll find what guitars, basses, and accessories. You won't find anything else on the Gibson website. I've had a look, and it doesn't make reference to any of the other companies in their group. They own Mesa Boogie, so obviously there's a premium amplifier company in there. They own KRK, so there's obviously a pro audio element. And I even looked into some of the legacy products. Gibson, they used to have their own brand studio monitors, but they're now legacy products. So if you look at some of the differences between Gibson and Fender, we need to understand Fender produce their own amplifiers. They have their own in-house amplifiers, their own name brand amplifiers, and if you look at the products that they've got on offer, they are very, very much heavily marketing the digital offerings. And I think this is going to be really key, how Fender could potentially take Presonus moving forward with them. Yes, Gibson own Mesa Boogie, but once again, I think we need to understand, if you look at the Fender products, I just went through the Anderton's website and I looked at products between the value of £50 and £500. So what's that? Roughly between $70 and $700. And there are 12 plus amps in that range, all Fender own brand. And they're all digital offerings, and the marketing is very, very much driven towards those digital style modelling amplifiers, and I think that's quite important, because you're not getting that type of thing from Gibson. Yes, they own Mesa Boogie, but Mesa Boogie are more that kind of boutique end. You pay a lot of money for a Mesa Boogie amp, whereas Fender offers a lot of more budget conscious offerings for the home studio. So I think that's very, very clear differentiation between Gibson and Fender. And if you then think about the wider Gibson group, Gibson own KRK, so they have their pro audio element. They produce studio monitors and things like that. But if you then look at the Fender group, they haven't really got anything like that. So if you then think Fender have no apparent presence in that particular field, in the pro audio field, it makes absolute sense that someone, they would like to bring someone like Presonus into the community. So, you think about the breadth of products that Presonus produce, it makes total sense that someone like Fender would be looking to, really have someone like Presonus on board, who do things like audio interfaces, who do things like studio monitors, mixers, PA systems, even microphones and things like that, and a fully fledged DAW. So I think that makes absolutely total sense. And then really just kind of going on from there, and this is really when it started to kind of hit home to me, is if you think about a lot of the modern digital products. So if you think about things like guitar amps and things like that, and there is a very heavy shift towards digital. We're very kind of moving towards digital amps with USB connectivity. Even some of the more premium amps, which may not have USB connectivity, they certainly have line outs so you can record DIs and things like that. And I just stopped to thought for a second. I thought, okay, because I know Fender is obviously steeped in history with amplification, and thinking about like twin reverbs and the tweed style amps and things like that. But it's not until you start to think about the modern offerings, the digital offerings, that you actually start to realise how many products they have in that budget-friendly category that's really driven towards providing the Fender tone to the home studio. So, like I said, I went through the Anderton's website, and I can to reel them off. So you have the Fender Rumble LT25 bass amp, the Mustang Micro headphone guitar amp, the LT25 guitar amp, the LT50 combo amp. You then got the Mustang GTX 50 modelling combo amp, the Rumble Studio 40 modelling 1x10 bass combo, the Acoustic Junior amp, Acoustic 100 acoustic guitar amp, Acoustic Junior Go amp, Fender Mustang GTX 100 modelling combo amp. And you think, that's 12 products they've got there that are in that, really focused on that home studio, on that to the low budget or the beginner into their musical journey. And it's all very much geared around a digital connectivity, USB outs. And it's very much clearly advertised. This is for you to record direct in your DAW of choice. So it's very much kind of geared towards that home studio recording, your own music without, we're not looking at Mesa Boogie type, boutique stuff here. Fender do a lot of that, but these are very, very much geared towards that market. And then I kind of started thinking about this further. Well, it's kind of like anything that you go and buy anything. You buy an interface, you buy an interface, you buy a MIDI keyboard, you buy a guitar amp, you buy this, you buy that, you buy the other. Most of it now comes bundled with some form of DAW. So if you think about that just for a second, you think, well, if they've got 12 products there that have USB connectivity, and if they're paying whoever for a copy of a license, let's say, okay, it'll be at a reduced rate, why would they not look to get a company involved in the group that does all that for them? It's going to be, think about the longevity of these type of products. There's going to be more and more digital products on the market, so it makes sense to be able to sell these with some form of DAW offering as part of the group. It makes absolutely total sense to me. And it's like, even going on to some of the others, and the bass breaker amps and things like that have the DI outs and things like that. Fender don't really have a presence in that pro audio world. So I think you really kind of have to look at that and think, to me, it's starting to make total sense why someone like Fender would really want to kind of collaborate with Presonus to really kind of fill in that gap that they've got in their own business. So I think from that perspective, it really, really does make sense. So my initial thoughts are, I actually think this is quite positive. I really do think this is quite positive. It'll be interesting to see how things develop. And I'm really hopeful that this could be a turning point. So some of the other things, there are some other considerations as well. And budget is always something that's, it's often talked about. And if you look at the size of Presonus, and it's where it's grown from to where it's developed to now, but it's still a small company. If you think about the size of the Fender group, for me, I think that extra, that capital for the R&D to really kind of develop the products that they have further, I think that can only be win-win-win. It just kind of seems to fit. And I just keep going back to this whole ethos of where Fender came. It came out of the ashes, so to speak, back in the 80s, and it's been redeveloped, really worked. And they are very, very much looking at the future with a lot of their products, which is where I think that, you know, Presonus going with a lot of their stuff too. So yeah, my initial thoughts are actually really, really quite positive. So what do you guys think? Be really, you know, I'm really keen to kind of understand where you guys are at on this. I've seen a lot of people mention things like, you know, what, you know, should I be looking at jumping ship with another DAW? And I honestly don't think that's necessary at all. There's a few reasons for that. I think we need to understand that Presonus is certainly a developing brand. It's not perfect. Studio One is not perfect, but it's certainly developing. I think it can certainly take a lot more of an understanding from the community about further developments and things like that, and I think this will only help. I think having that extra R&D, having that extra capital, those extra engineers, developers, etc., I think that will really help Studio One develop moving forward. So I think, you know, I really don't think that there's any need at the moment to be looking at changing to another DAW just off the back of this. If anything, I think it's probably a good time to step in. I know a lot of people don't like the Sphere subscriptions and things like that, which is each their own. But it's, you know, once again, it's a forward-thinking offering. It's not the only offering. If you want Studio One, you can still buy it outright. No one's, you know, that is still very, very much on offer. But you know, it's very much thinking about the future and developing these extra products. So, you know, I certainly don't think it's now's the right time to be looking at jumping ship. In fact, I would probably say the opposite. Now, it's, to me, I'll get the impression that this could be a very exciting time for further developments. Okay, DJ Givaldi, I understand the marketing aspects of Fender doing this, but I'm more interested in what I will gain or lose if I now own the Studio One 5 Pro license and subscriptions of Sphere. In terms of what you will gain or lose if you own 5 Pro instead of Sphere, or whether you go Sphere instead of Pro, what you will gain or lose. I think this is probably the biggest misconception of Sphere. And I think this is the way that I would explain Sphere. Sphere is not a subscription of Studio One. Sphere is a subscription of every software-based product that Studio One produces. So you think it's Studio One, Notion, you think of all the add-ons, you think of all the libraries, you think of all the fat channel extensions, you think of the EQ plugins, the compressors. All of that is included in Sphere. Not only that, you then get the workspaces online. So if you want to collaborate with either Studio One users or non-Studio One users, you can use a workspace online with up to 50 gigabytes worth of storage. You get all of that for free. You know, there are a lot of training programs and things like that are behind the scenes as well. You get all of that as part of the Sphere membership. So it's not a Studio One subscription. It's a Presonus subscription. Everything for their software. Studio One 5 Pro, you will literally get Studio One 5 Pro. So you will just get that and the standard, you know, plugins, the EQs, compressors, and things like that. Things like Fat Channel, you'll get the basic Fat Channel, but you won't get all the add-ons. Ampire, I don't think you get the additional Ampire contents and things like that. I think you need to really kind of think about what you need, because I think this is what I would always advise to anyone who's making a decision between Studio One 5 Pro as a standalone or whether they go Sphere. Do you need Notion? I don't personally, but I still subscribe to Sphere, because one thing that I like is outside of mastering, when I come to writing my own music, I'm really getting into experimenting with sounds. And you literally get, the download is like, I'm not kidding, it's like 100 gigabytes worth of additional content with Sphere. So that is a massive, massive, massive plus. Now, if you only use third-party VSTs for your sound design and production, then that's probably not worth it. If you don't use Notion, if you don't use all the additional add-ons, then I would say Studio One 5 Pro as the standalone product is probably the best way to go. There are certain things that I do miss with the normal standard Studio One 5 Pro. I love the fat channel extensions, and this is the thing: you get all of the fat channel extensions with Sphere. You wouldn't get that with a standard Pro license. So if you want all the additional emulations, all the EQ modules, and all of that, you won't get that. You can buy them as add-ons, but they're not included as part of the normal standard Studio One 5 Pro offering. That being said as well, the thing with Sphere you can pick up and put down anytime you like. So you can cancel your subscription and then you can restart your subscription. Yes, I understand when people say, well, if I cancel Sphere, then I will lose access to my music. Well, that's not actually the case, because if you render the song files out, then you still have access to all of that music. You just obviously then won't be able to go back in and do any adjustments or any tweaks after the fact, unless you started your Sphere subscription again. So I think that's kind of, it's one of the, a lot of people will say, well, you lose access to your music. You don't. What you just need to do is make sure that you actually, render out any files that you haven't rendered out so far, and make sure you've saved and backed up all your songs. But it doesn't mean you'll lose access to it. It just means you'll lose access to, obviously, those project files and song files, etc., unless you was to resubscribe to Sphere at a later date. So that is obviously a big plus of owning Studio One outright. So, that's effectively how you need to look at it. Don't look at it as Studio One Pro and a subscription of Studio One. The Sphere is a subscription of Presonus, and I think that's something that really needs to be just kind of taken into consideration for your decision there. Updates. I mean, Presonus are pretty good with their updates anyway, in terms of offering them for free. I don't know if that will change. They used to do the 0.5 updates for free. I don't know if that will change now where they got Sphere. That is something that only time will tell. I don't think we've had a 0.5 update. What we now 5.4. So it will, at some point within the next, 6 months, 12 months, something like that, I would anticipate that there will be a 0.5 release. Historically, they've always been free, but I don't know if that's going to be the case moving forward. With Sphere, all updates are free. Obviously, it's a subscription, so you don't pay for any updates of any of the softwares that they have. They're all free. So that's something that to consider as well. So, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon in terms of, I certainly don't see them taking away the standalone license. I think they would be daft to. You think of Avid, they still offer a subscription as well as owning the products outright. Pretty much anyone who has a subscription-based model, probably except for Slate Digital, they're the only ones that I can think of off the top of my head that don't offer the products as standalone. Not as far as I'm aware. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think they'd be daft to not offer it. I think there's so much of their client base who own the products outright, who've always owned the products outright and like to own the products outright. They'd be daft to change that now. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. But I just, when it comes to making decisions, just think, do you need all the additional add-ons, all the sound libraries, all the additional content, Notion, things like that? If you do, Sphere's a no-brainer. If you don't, Studio One 5 Pro is probably the my advice to go down that route. So what does everyone else think? I mean, what's your initial thoughts about this whole Fender merger? It's quite an interesting terminology as well, that they're very much kind of pitching this as a merger. It's kind of, it was interesting to hear a lot of people discussion around acquisition, and the wording can be a little bit kind of it can be a little bit, I don't know if misleading is the right word, but it can be a little bit kind of complex in the way they word these things. But they've been very clear in the way they've announced it, and it's a definitive agreement of merger, not an acquisition. So I think they've been very, very careful in the way they've worded this. So I think that's very interesting. That's something that I think should be, a positive if I'm looking at this from a purely neutral standpoint. They go on to say about sharing the same passion for music, commitment, innovation, same desire to inspire, and things like that. Is the thing about the statement for me is it's been very, very carefully worded. I think once again, just going back to the whole cakewalk thing. I go back to the cakewalk thing. I think they would have thought long and hard about this. They would know that this will be one of the major concerns when you go through any kind of business transaction like this. There will be some kind of risk management undertaking beforehand. What are the one of the biggest risks is going to be losing clientele, and if one of the biggest fears from your clientele is seeing another a competitive product such as Cakewalk really disastrously being handled by an acquisition, they would have really thought long and hard about this. So I think personally, I'm sure they would have taken all of that into consideration. Hence the reason why they've been very careful with the wording of their statement. Studio One now switched to a fully subscribed version. No, I don't think it will. The license cost a bit, and now I would have to pay a subscription. No. So I don't think it would. I honestly don't. Because once again, just going back to, if you think about it, the Studio One doesn't offer a subscription. Presonus offer a subscription, and that's the way you want to. I would really look at it. I really don't. I don't see them doing that, because if you look at all of the feedback from the forums, there is so much. I don't want to say negativity, but I'll certainly say reluctance from a lot of from the customer base to fully adopt a subscription version. I really don't see that. And then if you think about it as well, with Studio One, I think one of the reasons that they're also probably reluctant. Well, I would anticipate that they may be reluctant to go down a subscription version, is because they offer the license through Splice. So if you want to get hold of Studio One Professional, you can actually go through Splice and do one of these rent-to-buy schemes. It's very, very similarly priced to Sphere. So if you can't afford the Pro license outright, you could always go to Splice and get a rent to buy, and then once you obviously paid off the full product price, you then own that license outright. So I don't see at any time soon Studio One switching to a fully subscribed version. I honestly don't. The license costs a bit, and now I'd have to pay a subscription. Once again, I don't see how they could do it. The only time I would ever, if they were to do that, I think morally they would have an obligation, certainly not to do it at a mid-version update. They would have to do it at a new version. So if it was, say, version 6 or version 7, because that's the only way they could do it. Because if you buy a license for 5 up to 5.999, whatever it is, then they would, I don't see how they could morally do that. I honestly don't. And even then, they'd just be stupid to do it. Some of the other thing as well is just understanding just thinking about the client base that Studio One has. And if you go to the forum or the Facebook group, and if you look at a lot of the people who are involved, it's very, very much an eclectic mix of people. It's not geared towards all younger generations with a certain type of music. It's very, very much geared around everyone. So if you're into EDM, you're into country, you're into folk, whatever you're into, they really kind of try and accommodate everyone. And if you then look at the amount of people on the group who are, let's say, of a certain age, they're not going to buy a subscription. They're really not going to do it. And if you then think about the very much kind of how can I put this in a very diplomatic way? I would very much kind of consider myself an atheist, but there is a very, very deep underlying roots in people of faith. And then, people like, a lot of people like that, they're not going to do the subscriptions. They want to buy a product and know that they own the product outright. I just think they would really be daft to go to a fully subscribed version, and I think that's why they've done the Sphere as a Presonus subscription rather than a Studio One subscription. It makes sense, and I think once again they'd have to differentiate that product in some way, shape, or form, which is why they've done all of the Presonus products rather than just going Studio One. If you want to do the rent to buy, you can get that through Splice. If you want to own Pro outright, you can buy it outright. And if you want to own every single software that Studio or Presonus own, you can do that through Sphere. They've effectively got everyone covered. And then you've got obviously the Artist and the Prime versions, and even with Artist now, you can use third-party VST plugins, which beforehand that was a paid add-on. So I really don't see them going that way. Hi Dwight, thank you very much. No, I think it's one of these, it's one of these things that we just need to reflect on, and it's very, very, it's very easy with change, and I see it a lot through the Facebook group, and it's very easy for people to really kind of get emotionally attached without really considering necessarily all of the different parts of the discussion. And it's as humans, we're all very quick to think about the negatives in a situation without really considering everything in totality. And it's just doing that little bit of research today. For me, it's been a big eye-opener. And like I said, my initial reaction was quite positive when it was announced, because I think I've always for a long time felt that Studio One could be really, really, really I know like Pro Tools is still regarded, even though I don't necessarily believe it, but it's still regarded as the industry standard. I think Studio One has potential. It seems to be kind of taking bits from all of the different DAWs, and it seems to be implementing them. Not necessarily always the best way of doing it, but they do seem to be taking bits that are really kind of useful. But I do kind of get the impression that they're doing it almost with the handbrake on, and this could potentially allow them to take the handbrake off and really kind of go at it. Full guns. So I'm very happy and hope you enjoyed it. This operation will bring us benefits, because as a guitarist I appreciate Fender, but he has never worked in this field. And I think this is going to be something that they will have to think long and hard about. One of the things I took heart from when looking at the Fender history was when it was sold by CBS, it was sold to people from the industry. Obviously, it's guitar industry, music industry, loyal employees, people who've been there a long, long time. So they would have gone through very similar situation. If you think about when they bought it from CBS, very much kind of starting from scratch, that would have been, they had to have had those people in that industry that knew how the industry works, knew the marketing, they knew the products, they knew the QC, everything like that. And that's how they basically developed over the last 35 years. They're going to have to be very, very careful, because it is, like you say, it is a different part of the industry. People, they do not have, as far as I can tell from the research I've done, they don't have a pro audio in terms of, the pro audio as we see it. They don't have a part of the group. But then actually this makes sense. And likewise, I would anticipate, although I cannot confirm, I would anticipate that there would have been discussions and protocols, maybe even contracts signed, which would allow Presonus employees to potentially retain their positions. I don't know that, but it's a common thing in business transactions and acquisitions, mergers, for people, the selling individuals, to put clauses in the contract which says, well, we don't want you to, we don't want you to dismiss employees, etc. They're, kind of as part of the contracts, they have to retain X amount of employees or whatever it will be. So I think they'd be very, very daft to do that, especially with the depth of knowledge that the guys at Presonus have. You never know, there might be new people coming on board, change of tax. there's always room for development in any business, and that will always be the case, and it will, they will, the Fender Music Instrument Corporation, whatever they're called, they will have to think long and hard about some of those tough decisions, and I'm sure they will have tough decisions to be made. But I would anticipate that the core, the core faces that we know and love, those core experts, core developers, I would anticipate that they would still be there. And even then, I think it's going to take such a long time to pan out. It's not something that we're going to be seeing any changes from imminently, I don't think. I think it's one of those things that, realistically speaking, you're talking about probably 12 months at least. Before the music industry, I was very heavily steeped in the corporate world, one of the top 50 companies in the world, and very much kind of the way that the businesses transact is really kind of looking at the business, analysing what's happening, what's working well, what's not working well, and then that's all going to take time. So they're going to have those experts in that place already. Exactly, Dwight. Yeah, they were on the right track. I think it's kind of. I'm hoping. I'm not close enough to the Studio One or Presonus, in a business to really know what goes on behind the scenes. So I don't really know, the full ins and outs of any constraints, etc. But it's kind of certainly my impression. If I look at what, I've been using Studio One since I think it was version 3 when I started to use Studio One, and there's been developments, not too quick, not too soon, but it's been development after development after development, and sometimes those developments aren't refined. So it kind of sometimes leads to a bit of a bad experience from users. I mean, personally, I kind of. Obviously, the mastering side of things, I have my frustrations, but it's never really been since the project page has been introduced. It's never really been revamped. But there are a lot of different people from different walks of life who do different types of music, whether you're songwriting or mix engineers, or there are implementations that Studio One has had, but it's not always been the best way to do it, and there's been a few gripes off the back of it. I just, I'd like to think now that they could really, if this comes to fruition as I would like to see it, I would like a little bit more kind of thought behind it, a bit more money thrown at it, a bit more resource thrown at it, because once again, I think it's really on the right track, but it does let itself down in certain areas, and I think they could really, go at it hard and make this a really, really fantastic DAW. So I'd like to see that as well. So that's great. So for me, I'm hoping it's gonna have a real kind of positive spin to it. It's difficult. I don't want to be kind of negative towards Gibson as such, because once again they seem to be turning the corner. I know there's been a lot of criticism of their QC, for instance, on some of the guitars, but they seem to be really turning the corner now. The feedback coming out of some of the products that they sell is that it's really kind of starting to up their game in terms of QC. But they tend to be a company that kind of sees a gap and buys a company to kind of fit that gap, whereas Fender, I don't really see that. This is more of kind of a merging in. That's how they position it, rather than kind of an acquisition. And I think that they will look to kind of use that to adopt a lot of the things that Presonus do to supplement their existing offerings. Like I say, if you go and buy a Fender Mustang amp with door connectivity, it's just a no-brainer. They can say, well, we'll give you, you think about the Presonus hardware. You go and buy an Atom SQ. You go and buy an interface. Oh, well, you'll get Studio One 5 Artist with it. It makes absolute sense that Fender will be looking at this thinking, okay, right, if I sell that Fender Mustang amp, it's got door connectivity, we'll give you a copy of Studio One 5 Artist. Because I suppose ultimately, the goal is not for the end user to be using Studio One 5 Artist. It's for the end user to go and use Studio One 5 Artist and then think, oh, what's that Pro about? What's that Sphere about? Oh, that looks good. All these additional extras. I like the way Studio One works. Let's go and buy Pro. Let's go and buy Sphere. And, you know, I just think it makes total sense from a business standpoint for them to be looking at it in that respect, in my opinion. So, right, that's enough of me waffling. Has anyone got any questions at all? Any questions at all? Have you got any other? I think the thing as well is, you know, I've only come at this from one angle, and I'll be really, if there's something that, you know, you think, oh, well, have you considered this? Have you considered that? Or what about this? Or what about that? Let me know. Let me know in the chat. These matters of commercial policy and marketing are complicated in this respect. Presonus and Fender will certainly benefit, but we users want a better and better Studio One. Yeah, exactly. We do, and it's I think, you know, when it comes to, as I'm getting older, I'm certainly becoming more philosophical in the way I look at things. And, you know, when it comes to these, you say commercial policy, it's exactly right. It's business and marketing and things like that. But it's still human beings at the end of it. And I think this is the thing that I would like to take heart from is the roots of Studio One are steeped in a tradition of family and community. And if you look at the way that, you know, the Fender from, say, 1985 onwards, it's very much kind of sharing that ethos. And when they say that they share mutual values, I think this is very, very something that they really want to kind of get across. Is this isn't just like a you know, a corporate transaction where one company is buying another company. This is something that is, you know, very much looking towards or very much geared towards two companies with a community ethos looking to serve the community better. That's the impression that I am getting, certainly from this. It makes total sense from that perspective, and I think that's different to what I see or what I have seen in the past with other companies. But yeah, you're right. We all want a better Studio One, and it doesn't matter how good they can make it. They can make it you know, they could make it the industry leading. We'd always want more, wouldn't we? You know, certainly there's lots of bits that I would like included when I'm sat down here doing a mastering track, and I think, oh, I fancy a cup of tea. Studio One, put the kettle on, will you? That would be great, but obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon. So yeah, but I mean, have you heard? Has anyone got any, you know, any friends or colleagues or relatives or anyone that they interact with who uses Studio One? You know, have they heard any other? I don't want to say grumblings, but grumbling may be a right word, because it's you know, there's a lot of you know, there is negative association with this, which is fine. You know, once again, it's when a lot of people don't like change and they're scared of change, and it's just natural. So it'd be interesting to see if there's anything that comes to light that anyone's heard of that I haven't thought of, because once again, I'm only coming at this from one angle. So any feedback you've got, leave me a comment in the chat, and you know, certainly have a look and let's discuss it. So oh. And let's open this out as well. What would you like to see from Studio One? What's your thing that you'd like to see make it better? Or what, in your opinion, would make it better? So always a term I hate that, better. Better for who? Because I would love some things, but a lot of people say, well, what do you need that for? And it's kind of like, well, it's something that, you know, that in mastering that is used quite frequently. And they say, well, is it? Yeah, but it's not always going to be better for someone else. A lot of people may not use it in the same way that I might use it. So something that's better for me may not be better for someone else. But certainly, what would you would like to see from Studio One that would help you in your workflow? Be really good to understand. Okay. So we'll see if any more questions come in, and so we'll keep this rolling in for anyone. Not a problem, DJ Vivaldi. My pleasure, anytime. What do you think of these live streams? I'm probably about 5, 6 months in now. I love doing them. But once again, I'd love to do it where you get benefit from. It was an obvious choice this month because obviously the news has only broke a couple of days ago. But if there's anything you particularly like to discuss on these live streams, then let me know, because it's I'm doing a lot of getting a lot of feedback, and I'm trying to, I'm certainly taking it all on board. But I want a lot of these things to be very much geared towards the common challenges of all you guys. So if there's anything particularly like to see on one of these live streams, sometimes it's the product reviews. They can be quite good, or some of the how you can use this product and things like that. If that's what you'd like to see more of, great. Let me know. If there's a particular mastering concept, it's something that I'm more than happy to discuss. What about the business side? It's something that very, very, very rarely discusses, the business side of audio. And another thing is about health and welfare. Now, I'm not, you can see, I'm not exactly the healthiest person in the world, but there is, certainly when it comes to mental health, there's a lot of things that I think we need to be taken into consideration when it comes to the isolation of studio life and interacting with other people, and a lot of different things like that. So if these are all different things you'd like to discuss in live streams or videos or whatever, then let me know in the chat. One thing I will say is I've got quite a few. I don't want to kind of make this a product review channel. I really want this to be around different concepts and different how you can get better masters. But there are certain products that I think you guys will really, really benefit from. One thing that I would really like to see, one thing I would really like to try, and I am going to be doing it very soon, is be looking at the TB Pro Audio DP Meter XT. That's the paid version of their loudness meter. Now, I know it's a loudness meter. I know people say, well, something just needs to just tell me how loud it is. But it kind of this is one with all the bells and whistles. It's a premium product without a premium price tag. It's very, very affordable. TB Pro Audio makes some amazing plugins. Big shout out to them, because once again they've helped me out with some of the products that I've been using for my mastering. Don't get me wrong, I've paid for them, but it's kind of like, they provided these great plugins for us, and they very generously gave me a free plugin for the 1K subscriber giveaway. And they just, once again, it comes back to that whole thing around community. They're one of these companies that really look after their customers. So I'm going to be looking at the DP Meter XT. They have the free version, which is the DP Meter 5, which is one of my go-to loudest meters. But if you think of the DP Meter XT, for anyone who's seen the Julian loudness meter, it's, I don't want to say it's kind of similar to that, but the GUI is, it's comparable. So you have very much kind of the visualization on the right hand side of the plugin, and very much numerics on the left hand side, etc. So that is something I think that will benefit me massively in the way I work, and it's something that I want to kind of really show you guys, so you can see some of the the things that I'm finding really beneficial. I'm pretty much, in terms of the mastering side of things, I'm probably, I'm still using, at times I'm going between Studio One and Reaper. Studio One, I'm very predominantly now kind of looking more towards the song page. So I really want to kind of revamp. I did a little video a little while ago, and I need to kind of, I don't want to say revisit, but supplement it, because I really want to show you guys how I make the most of the song page for mastering. The project page is great for the metadata and the file arranging and just little things like that. It's brilliant for just the way you can do all of your cutting the clips or cutting the song files, and then you can add all the gaps in between. So it's like a predetermined gap you can enter, so you get that nice consistent flow between the tracks, and rearranging the metadata and all things like that. It's great for that. But it is the bits like the automation and clip gain envelopes and things like that you obviously can't do in the project page. So the way I'm working now is pretty much kind of 85-90% in the song page, and then the last 10% in the project page. it's so I really want to kind of delve into that a little bit more. There's still a few frustrations in terms of the exporting features, and it's so, some of the exporting features I really think that they could be developed. I mean, I don't want to compare Reaper against it, because Reaper is a whole different kettle of fish. But if you think about the Reaper and the regions and the region exports and the way it does that, you can basically add any region and do anything like that, and then export any of the particular regions you want to. And it's you can really do that in Reaper, and it's something that you can't really do in Studio One. It's really difficult to kind of export particular tracks or individual tracks. So that's something I'd really like to see developed. What channel I find I prefer to develop subjects, music production, mastering, and tools, and I come across this stream by accident. But it's kind of, once again, it's giving you the guidance that you're going to find valuable. And if that's more about, some of the mastering concepts and how you would approach a certain situation, then, I'm certainly all for that. Not a problem at all. There's so much to cover. One thing that you would really hopefully like is we're going to do the mastering breakdown of the Kurdistan Waltz by IDD QD Sound. I'm really looking forward to that, because Aria, he's going to be looking at it from the mixing standpoint, and I'm going to be looking at it from the mastering standpoint. So it's very, very much going to be, a walkthrough of the mix into the walkthrough of the master, and how we approached certain things. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really excited by that. So hopefully you'll be able to get some stuff off that as well, get some benefits. So So for once, I'm out of waffling, which is very, very rare. That I've got nothing to say, as my wife will often testify. No worries, DJ Vivaldi. No worries at all. My pleasure. So rather than sitting here not saying too much or going through my rendition of dad jokes, which is probably just as bad, to be fair. Anyone else got any questions at all? So it shows we got one viewer left. So if there's no more questions, we'll call it a day in a second. But what I will say is, if anyone's got any questions about this at all, then let me know. So wherever if you're going back through this and you haven't seen it live and you're going back through the comment section, leave me a question in the comment or email me, smudge@masteringinthebox.net. I don't know anything, any more than you know. Once again, I'm not affiliated, I'm not an employee, but I do think, once again, is if you want any of the information or the research that I've done, or you want to know some of the resources got the information from, more than happy to share it. And I do hope, it is very, very much my belief that this could be a real positive. That's certainly the thing that I'm taking from this, and cross fingers, touch wood, that hopefully I'm right. So I'm certainly taking heart from this situation. So any questions at all, then certainly let me know in the comments or drop me an email. Once again, smudge@masteringinthebox.net. Okay. So there's no further questions coming through. Just to recap then, once again, if anyone interested in any of the mastering services, then check out my details through fiverr.com. And as you can see there, it is, I won't read the link out because it's fiverr.com/share/copy and paste the link into the web browser, and you'll get my gig on Fiverr. And once again, mixing and mastering critiques. And this is not something where I'm just going to give you a little bit of paper that says, well, I think this, I think that. Once again, this is something that I want to be value add, so I do a video breakdown, and I will go through exactly at the points in time where I think certain things could be tweaked, and I will then reference that against tracks and kind of give you real good breakdowns and ideas as where I'm kind of getting my critique from. So it's very, very much a comprehensive service. So if you want to know about the mastering services or the mixing and mastering critiquing services, then check out the links through fiverr.com. And if you want to support the channel, then there's the link also for Buy Me a Coffee. So it's www.buymeacoffee.com/masterinGITB. And it's once again, it's just going towards supporting the channel. I love doing this, but obviously things like plugins and, you know, all the different bits that go along with producing videos, it all comes at a cost. So any support that I receive is greatly appreciated, and all goes back in towards providing even more content for you guys. So as there's no further questions, we'll wrap this up here. But once again, any questions at all, I'm not going to claim to know the answers at all, because I'm not that closely associated with everything. But if you want to know any of the information that I've got, where I've got the research from, then please let me know. I'll be more than happy to share. And yeah, once again, I'm more than happy to share any thoughts that I have. But these are thoughts and opinions. Just bear that in mind. So without further ado, all that's left for me to say is I hope you'll keep safe and well, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video real soon. Thanks, guys.